Hi, everybody. How's everybody feeling today? Good, good. It's the last day of Seoul. Are you guys tired? Are you guys energetic? Well, you guys are here, but we're also here too. I just want to do a little intro. My name is Daoud. I'm the art director at Dazed MENA. Woo! Yay! I'm not sure if you guys had a chance to go over to our booth. It's in the corner at the back of Seoul. Really beautiful structure designed by our creative director Chindi. And we got a bunch of magazines for you guys too, so please make your way after the talk. Uh, and to the left of me is an incredible Iranian British designer that has this way of mixing and merging traditional Iranian craftsmanship with contemporary silhouettes. And she's not just a designer, guys. She's a storyteller at the end of the day. She likes to incorporate her identity, her culture, and just like explain a sense of belonging. So I want everyone to give a round of applause for Paria Farzaneh.
Hi
Per-
guys.
It's your first time in Dubai, right?
Yeah, first time in Dubai. Yeah.
Thoughts? How you feeling?
Thoughts is quite overstimulating. There's a lot going on, but this is the kind of closest we can be to Iran. So I'm really, really happy and so thankful to be here.
It's kind of nuts because if you go to the beach, Iran's literally across the sea.
I know,
Yeah.
it's crazy.
Like you
So
can kind of
close.
see it off to the distance with all the mountains in the back.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Somebody told me we could get like a ferry across, so I had it in mind.
Sometimes when me and my friends go to there's like islands that you can go to do like a little beach day.
Yeah.
They'll be like, oh, we can't go past this line because it's literally Iranian territory. So it's like, oh, that's actually super
So
cool.
close, yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
super close.
So Priya has been raised in the UK and London, and she graduated fashion school in
Yeah.
2016.
Yeah.
So I just want to ask you how that was growing up in London. How did you get your start in fashion, and where do you draw your inspiration from?
Yeah, so I actually was born in Devon, which is like a seaside town on the coast of England. And then for some reason, my mum and dad decided to move to this kind of very secluded countryside town called Hull. It's the city of Hull. And yeah, I basically grew up in the East Riding of Yorkshire, which is
Yeah.
very, very different to London. Very, very different. And yeah, ever since I was like a child, like I always was drawing, like making stuff, and I was really motivated by practical thinking and making things. So from a young age, I wanted to be a fashion designer. I remember like writing a letter to my uncle in Iran and saying like, if I become a fashion designer, I will pay you £5,432. He's still got that letter, and I hope he
Yeah.
doesn't actually come for that money. But yeah, it's kind of funny how you have this kind of idea as like 7 years old, and it actually happens. So it's a really big imposter syndrome all the time, actually. So
And I know you make it into a point to integrate your Iranian heritage and just the essence of like being Iranian
Yeah.
into the work that you do.
Yeah.
How do you find? Has there been challenges of like trying to put Iranian like style like motifs into contemporary designs that is kind of that like a consumer that's not Persian or not Iranian that would be interested in?
yeah, I think it's because, like, for me, I have never really tried to be anything or anybody else. So being Iranian or being British or being from Hull is just who I am. And relaying that message in my work is just like my only way of communicating how I'm feeling or the things that I'm thinking. And all of my stories or everything that I've done have just been experiences of my life, and the reason why I think a lot of people can resonate with that is because they've either gone through something quite similar themselves, or they see that and they see a bit of themselves. And I think that's why I guess it's been so successful in a way, touch wood, because I've always just been myself, and never kind of changed in the industry to be somebody else that I would need to be successful, if that makes sense.
I think a lot of us have this the same, like a similar experience where we are from a culture, from an ethnic background, but we grew up in a completely different place that doesn't really represent who we are, doesn't really accommodate to our traditions, to our practices. Was there any challenges trying to represent both the British side and also the Iranian side in fashion and also the work that you do?
Yeah, I think it's always like when I was starting out, a lot of people would just like box me and be like, hey, this is British-Iranian designer. And it's like, sometimes I feel like that's just like a buzzword that I'm Iranian, and it comes with this kind of, I don't know, tokenism maybe.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, you are from this region, so you're just ticking a box essentially because you are Iranian and you are British. And that's rare, and we kind of want to showcase that. Sometimes it can be for the right reasons and sometimes it's not. But either way, it's great that me, myself, has had the opportunity to showcase my work and what I'm trying to say. I've never really been like silenced because of, what I'm trying to say or do. So yes, there has been challenges and there is kind of still challenges as well. But I feel like from the beginning, I've been really vocal about who I am and what I stand for. And I've never really compromised the vision or tried, like I said, to be somebody else to fit in this kind of system, which is very strange. Very strange.
It is, yeah. It's complicated having to try to navigate between not compromising who you are as a person, as well as how you grew up, and also our ancestors too, at the end of the day, and trying to represent that in a much more authentic way. So I'm very curious to know like how important storytelling is into fashion and also into your collections.
So important, like I feel like it's really obvious when somebody does something, and well, for me anyway, that has no substance. And the reason is I feel like there's so much going on in the industry now, and there's a lot of people trying to say kind of the same things, and people aren't really being honest or being the truest version of themselves. And that comes across, because it's like we live in this like social media presence where people are seeing what other people are doing, continuously comparing themselves. So they're like, oh, wow, maybe I need to be more like this person. Then suddenly the story kind of changes and they start to become little filtrations of this other entity, which is not them. So it's for me, it's really important. And also, I really don't know how to do anything else. I don't know where else to draw inspiration from.
Right.
And again, I think that's another reason why people relay with that, is because this is my honest and true expression. Like, I couldn't look at somebody else and be like, wow, I really look up to this person's lifestyle. Maybe I should be more like that. I can't live beyond my means. So this is all I have, and this is all that I can be.
It's interesting because like I feel like a lot of people now are very spread out. They want to be multi-hyphenated. They want to be they want to do everything, and they can't really settle into one. How, like, has it been difficult to kind of like just stay like in place and just trying to like really be a master of your craft? Or has there been challenges where you're like, you know what, like this is all I know, but is this the only thing I should know? Or is it something, or is there other things that you were kind of like intrigued about to explore? Or like how difficult is it to like kind of like stay like focus onto the mission?
I think it just takes like, I don't know, 50 years to master something, to be a master of an art form, or a mathematician, or somebody who's been like practicing a certain type of, creative expression, and to be like I am all these different things. I think it's really difficult to excel in those things to a certain level where people are like, wow, this is really good. You know, somebody who starts painting a canvas and is really good and picks up really quickly, maybe over the couple of years they can be really, really good and maybe they can have a show. But I think it would take 20 years for somebody to become a very, you know, I don't know, like successful artist and whatever that means in terms of success. For me, like I wear so many different hats. Like people think that I'm just here like doing these shows and like just like creating these designs and it's just like me clicking my fingers, but it's like I'm actually in the bush. I don't know if you can see there's like a bush in the back. I'm literally like crouched on all fours, like doing so many different things. And I feel like in fashion, I think everybody thinks that it's just so polished, it's so pristine, and everything just happens with somebody's click, and that we have so much money to make things happen. And it's just not true. You know, it's not true at all. We've just been like, for me, I've been really lucky because I've worked with some really amazing partners. Like for this show, I was working with Converse, and to be able to do these amazing things, like you will need budget, you will need money to be able to, you know, blow up a field, which is what I did there. So yeah, going back to your question, sorry, getting a little bit
No, I love it.
on a different tangent there, but yeah, I feel like I have done so much already in fashion, whether that's like writing a cash flow diagram or designing denim or prints or casting or PR or even this concept of blowing up a field, which actually happened during the protests in America when George Floyd was killed. And I kind of had this moment as my kind of like expression of like, I don't want to speak, you know, I don't want to do interviews, and I didn't, you know. I remember this like making like CNN news because it was like British-Iranian blows up field, and I'm just like, oh yes. But also like, yeah, I did do that, and it's, you know, it's an art form, it's expression. It's not really meant to come across as something that's violent, you know. It speaks for itself, and I think that's really important, you know.
And I think I know you mentioned your collaboration with Converse. You've had a few more collaborations since then.
Yeah.
With Beats by Dr. Dre, as well as most recently Hoka. When you are having these, but you're also a very genuine person, and you also have your own political beliefs. You also have your own morals and your values. How I feel like a lot of creatives or a lot of people who eventually collaborate with brands kind of have to like wash some of those aspects of themselves to be able to get through to the end product.
Yeah.
So I'm very curious to know like how your experience was collaborating with brands, kind of like allowing them to understand, for them to allow you to kind of like present yourself as you are, to present these ideas. And also a lot of them are statements at the end of the day. A lot of the projects, a lot of the collections that you do are statements. So have you been in situations where, you don't have to say the names, but like, have you been in situations or rooms where people are telling you, you know, you need to kind of chill out. You need to like, you need to take a couple of steps back? Or has there been kind of like just like this belief system where they're like, you know what, we'll let Paria do whatever she wants and let's see what she cooks up?
Yeah, I guess like nobody really tells me no, which is a really like amazing position to be in, because I guess I kind of shout these things very silently. I would kind of present myself in a way where I'm not saying anything, but showing up in a certain way will be enough to communicate the message. And I think that is the best way of the communication, you know, regardless of like people saying, well, you can't really say this or you can't really do that. I feel like I will do it regardless, but in a very subtle and bold way. For example, when I did the collaboration with Hoka, the shoebox was actually the Palestine flag colors, and they didn't even clock what that was. And because it looked like a really cool design box, you know, like they weren't like, what is this? You know, we're this like big global brand, and to have that level of expression or freedom is it's amazing.
Yeah.
You know, like that's enough for me, you know, to be able to speak in that way without being so, I don't know, brash about what I'm trying to say, and letting the clothing or the pieces that we make be the only form of communication
For
in
sure.
representing that message.
But I also feel like you're not afraid to walk away or say no. And I think people feel this way too.
Yeah.
So I think in collaboration with you, I think it's predetermined that we do need to say yes. We need to allow her to be her, or else, she's not going to be conforming, or she's not going to be someone who's going to be like taking our direction.
Yeah.
So I think it's a really beautiful place to be in, especially in your position, who as somebody has a lot of like really deep beliefs, a lot of like morally right like not opinions, but like just like facts. So for big entities to allow you to be like that, it's actually really an incredible place to be in.
Yeah, it is so incredible. Like, I'm not saying like it's been an easy ride. It really hasn't. And it is really tough to work in fashion and, be able to get your work out, or for people to believe in what you're saying. But I wouldn't have changed anything. I wouldn't have ever changed anything, because nobody ever told me that I couldn't blow up a field or I couldn't do a box in a certain color, because that was the message, and again, like you said, it was just the purest form of how I was feeling and what I wanted to say. So yeah, I've been incredibly lucky to be me, I guess.
Now, like I know you mentioned the Converse the collection you did with Converse, and how you blew up a field, and how you were featured in in CNN.
Yeah.
Has there been any sort of like situations where like these viral moments on social media or online where like has there been like a pushback where you're like, oh, that's a crazy response, or has there been like just like like they're featuring you, you're like people understand what's going on, like what you're trying to communicate?
Yeah, definitely. Especially if there's anything regarding what I'm wearing. There has been like people kind of sending some negative energy, and for me, I just ignore it. And also, for anybody to comment and say those things, that's an absolute literal L, as they would say, because that's like a print on a tombstone. That's there, and that's somebody embarrassing themselves online. And for me to interact or engage with that, it's just fueling the fire. So I don't really care. It's really sad that people feel like trolling or saying these comments online will make them feel better, but in fact it's actually just putting them in a very, well, in the worst position, I would say. So yeah, at the beginning, I think I was definitely getting upset. Like, sometimes people would copy my work, and
Yeah.
obviously I didn't have like the funding or money to like say, oh, I need to do a cease and desist or whatever, all these things that people don't tell you because you're just, learning everything every day. So I would get upset when I would get like comments or people like emailing some like really silly things have happened to me in the past, and it would really hurt me. But now I'm just like tough. I'm like, you know what? Like, there are so many worse things going on in the world right now that this is literally just scratching the surface, and people just need to like step back and take perspective and not just be so jaded and like trying to have a little internet war argument.
And I think that's a reflection of the industry as well, right?
Yes.
Like
Yes.
I think when you're trying to be a trailblazer, which is a very thankless job, by the way. Like, it's like trying to like when you don't want to conform, and you want to do something that is totally you. A lot of people resist that because that's against the status quo, and so I think a lot of people have this knee-jerk reaction of being like, no, I have to hate what this person is doing because
Yeah.
they're being extra, or they're being too chaotic, and there's no like structure or no like guidelines here. But like, it's like, why do we need to follow these sort of guidelines in the first place, that that an industry that's historically non-inclusive
Yeah.
has established. So my question to you is like, how have you been able to? I'm not sure if everybody's aware that Paria has had multiple successful runway collection presentations over the last few years, especially and during Fashion Week as well. So, but Fashion Week is notoriously very structured, very rigid. You have to conform in ways to like be able to like get through the tunnel
The
to get
hurdles.
the huddle,
Yeah,
yeah, the
yeah.
hurdles. So throughout your time, how have you been able to like navigate that while being authentically you and also representing yourself and your culture as well?
Yeah, I remember like even doing this show that's actually on the screen right now, which was in a place called Amersham, which is the last stop on the Metropolitan line. And I remember like the British Fashion Council saying to me like, no one's gonna come. It's so far. Like you're not a kind of like big name. Like no one's gonna travel this far, or whatever. And I was just like, you know what? Like, I can't do this in the center of London. I'm just gonna do it, you know. And I did, and I've always just gone with my gut and said like, yes, it's far, it's this, it's whatever. But I always followed like my intuition in taking those risks. I remember my first show was actually in the basement of an Iranian restaurant that I really loved, and I had a really, really tiny budget from Converse, and they were like, you can use this to do what you want to do. And I basically just set up like what I imagined my kind of childhood family moments to be in Iran in the basement of this Iranian restaurant. And yeah, like 300 people turned up, and people were just like queuing to get in because like, what's going on? What is this? And yeah, I just feel like doing things like that and just yeah, following my gut and intuition, people are like, oh, like we want to see this. And yeah, I guess that just dominoed all these other things that I've done too, you know. um but with Fashion Week, I think we stopped doing all of these Fashion Week shows like 2 years ago now.
Yeah,
And that's because doing something like this costs so much, and to do it for 15 minutes, 15 minutes, all of this money for 15 minutes. It just feels so crazy to have like all these people who I don't know sitting front row, who are not my friends and family, people getting looked up, like what they're wearing, you know, like all these like prejudices which should not exist. It's just like, it's just crazy. Like I just didn't want to work that way anymore, and I wasn't interested in like the magazines that were like writing the art, these are the people that you need. Like who decided that these were the people that people need to care about, you know? And yeah, it's a lot of like gatekeeping, it's a lot of like, I don't know, it's the system I think is really broken, and they only want to see the people that they want to see, whoever they are, like the people sat at the table, whether you believe in like Illuminati or whatever, whoever it is, you know, like there are people who make decisions on who they want to see and who they don't want to see. And like you said before, if somebody's coming with some truth, or like saying, hey, actually this is not right, they will try and silence that,
for sure.
and they don't want to hear that, or they'll just be like, oh, this is a little bit too bold. And then you start becoming an outcast, which is kind of what happened to me. And you know what, I'd rather be an outcast than follow what everybody else is doing, or just stop saying who I am or what I'm trying to say. So we just stopped doing the shows completely. And like last year we started like a diffusion line, which is just the same way of like how we would make the runway ready to wear clothes the same, and just stopped selling it to stockists and made it accessible to people who want to buy it from the website, and just made it like amazingly cheaper. And that's what it allows you
Yeah.
to do when you don't sell wholesale and yeah, have to conform with this like this system.
Like going against the system, have you experienced any sort of like pushback through PR, through the like through publications? Are people still wanting to talk about what you're up to, or has it been a bit of a challenge getting people in these like entities and these like higher places to like really platform you in the way in on the path that you're trying to carve for yourself.
Yeah, I guess like I feel like the publications and the medias that want to communicate that message have also had to question who they are and whether anybody cares about what they're trying to say, and whether like my story belongs to them. And that kind of shifted. The more I did this, the more I realized that I was very far away from the typical medias or fashion magazines and all of those things, because they weren't really trying to portray this kind of message.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, the kind of media outlets and the people communicating this changed. And yeah, I think it's for the better. I don't really want to be affiliated with fashion. I want to be kind of away in a different space to that, because I feel like it's kind of not my I don't know if it's where I
Yeah.
conventionally belong.
And I think it's important to understand how you could just exist without having to please other people in a way where it's like that kind of goes against what you believe. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
So
And I think having this ability to kind of like see like, oh, like there's certain things that I'm not gonna receive if I go on this path, and that's totally okay because this path is the one that I want,
yeah,
is extremely commendable in the long run, because I think in the moment people just want to kind of stay safe, feel comfortable,
yeah,
and it's very hard to go against the grain. And but sooner or later there's going to be a time where they're going to look back and be like, you know what, Perea was right. Like, why are we like, they're all going to have their own instances and own experiences within the industry where they're all going to be like, you know what, forget about this. Like, why do we have to like participate in this thing?
yeah,
And so like that kind of leads me to my other question. It's like being Iranian, being
yeah,
Persian. There's from the West, like from a Western perspective, there's been a lot of politically charged opinions regarding identity and culture, and especially on the global scale, especially on the political scale too. I know like a lot of your work is infused with Iranian like culture, Persian heritage, traditions, motifs. And I know like a lot of your work is also to reimagine what Iran like what it means to be Iranian as well. Have and so in that realm, have you had a sense of like understanding, or has there been a sense of confusion in terms of like people having their own cognitive dissonance, being like, oh, like I thought that you guys are this way, but the way that you're introducing or like telling your own story, which is how you like how you're brought up, like how your parents are brought up, or what you were taught as a kid, like are they more accepting to that story, or are there a lot of like, oh, you know what, like nah, the news is telling me one thing, I'm gonna
yeah,
like lean towards that.
yeah. I think like even like the past couple of days, like people who've just come up to me and be like, "Oh, thank you so much for doing what you do," and I like it doesn't really like yeah, I it's kind of weird to like keep hearing that, and I kind of understand now what people are saying, and that's because people kind of want a voice or something that they feel comfortable with, and I'm not really saying anything else that nobody else is saying. It's just because I'm doing it in a kind of creative way that people are then like, oh wow, this is so amazing, or wow, this is like what my grandma did, this is what my dad did. And that's really important, like I've always been inspired by my family and all my experiences in Iran. So I've never really had anybody who's like come up to me and been like, oh, this is like stupid or whatever. And I don't know, I just feel like everybody's just longing to belong so badly that having somebody kind of collate all of that energy together is really important. And I guess like that's one of the main things of being Iranian. Like everybody's just like obsessed with each other. Like even if you don't want to like go home, you're spending like half an hour in a doorway like trying to go home because your family's just still talking.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And you're
You're
like
kind of just like lounging around in the
Yeah,
corner. It's
you're
like,
just
all
like-
right, can we go now? Like,
yeah, like everybody's just like, yeah, family is just so important, and it's never not been like a positive reinforcement. So yeah, it's always been positive, always.
and we actually had a conversation off stage before, and you mentioned that you do go back often back to Iran. You do have a lot of lived experiences in the country as well. So I think I think we also had this conversation regarding like how when diaspora live in another country, like live in a Western country, and they want to like kind of uphold their own traditions and their own culture through a consumable thing, like a consumer thing,
Yeah.
a consumer product. How do you like? How is it important? How important is it to stay authentic, and how do you stay authentic in the way that you present something that you're selling to people?
I kind of feel like it's a little, not an army, but kind of like a little commune of people. And it's kind of just having like, I don't know, a smiley face on your t-shirt and seeing somebody walking across the street who has that. And it's like a gentle nod. Like you don't say anything, but it's like you're nodding to that person because you're part of the same thing.
For sure.
And that means that you've done that with one item of clothing, and that's community building, and it's really important to have the signature print or like the, I don't know, whatever it is, like the logo, whatever, being embedded in the product, because yeah, again, that's a way that people signify and unify together that they are all part of the same thing without like going on a soapbox in Hyde Park and being like, I believe in this, I believe in that, you
Right.
know, and that's why fashion is so amazing, is because you can communicate without saying nothing at all, When somebody looks at you, it's like 10 seconds and you already know what they're trying to
Right.
say.
Absolutely. And I think the word community has been such a buzzword and has been integrated within corporate speak for the last
Yeah.
little while. I think
Yeah.
a lot of people kind of use community as a way to sell shit to people. But I think like in your opinion and from your point of view, how do you like what's the most authentic way to build community? Because I think a lot of people think that it's something that you can just like like you have like a brand name and you have like a couple of stuff to like to sell to people, and that's a community. But I think a lot of people don't really realize how long it takes to actually cultivate
Yeah.
this. So from your opinion, like what do you think the most genuine way to build a community?
I think showing up is really important. Just like going to that thing that somebody did or whatever and just being present. Even if you don't buy anything,
Yeah.
just somebody being there, like a familiar face. Like we find comfort in the familiarity of like family. And that's essentially what community is. It's family and having all those members being present. Like recently we did this launch with Hoka, and we'd paid this community center in South London to host the space, and my mum basically made like a, I don't know, 1.5 by 1.5 Iranian dish called Sholazad, which is like a saffron based like
Right.
rice pudding, and like she was just like scooping it up into bowls, and like everybody who came in was just like having that. And that's something they do at the masjid, on a
Yeah.
Friday, or like even when somebody dies or when the child is born. These are all like family and heritage ties that we have in our culture that we just do because that's what we do, and anybody else who wants to be a part of that will be a part of that as soon as they enter the space. And again, that's community. It doesn't matter who you are, what you do, or where you come from. Being present is like the most important thing. And I guess over the years people have wanted to be present, in
sure.
my space, and I've just been so lucky that it's just continued and become stronger and bigger over the years. So
For sure. I think the sense of belonging. Everybody has this, especially in the West, where it is such an individualistic society,
Yeah.
where it is promoted to just do things on your own, to be by yourself, to just like keep your head low and grind.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people are lonely. So I think have like spaces like this where people can come together, being like, oh, you know what, I'm Persian, or like, oh, hey, you know what, I really love your clothes, or hey, I really love streetwear, and just or I just like being around people
Yeah.
to come together and just have that shared experience with one another is honestly, it's really important. But I do find that it is going to be something very, very consistent, very like prevalent with the next few years, because you'll see this in different mediums as well. But I think in terms of community, your community is very like, it's been cultivating for the last few years, and it is a very sustainable thing, as sustainable practice as well. And I think sustainability is something that you really hone in on for the last few years,
Yeah.
in terms of like the pieces that you make, your the amount of pieces that you make, and how you make them.
Yeah.
So I'm very curious to know a little bit more about your process and your beliefs in terms of sustainability regarding your brand.
Yeah, so never really been interested in like mass producing clothes, and I remember like starting out with all of the stores and the stockists across the globe. They'd just be like coming to you in Fashion Week and being like, "What's the best seller?" And then you'd just be like, "Well, what do you like?" And you'd have to like then suddenly make like 200 of the same jacket or 200 of the same trouser, and it's like, wow, it really takes away from the thing that you initially designed. So we kind of just stopped working in that way. Like I said, we kind of stopped working with these stores because they were so demanding. And at the end of the day, like they were really diluting the vision. So last year when we started Blind Foresight, we have always sourced like materials that are end of roll, anything that we could afford basically. As people know, fabric is really expensive. So we would go to mills in London, in Europe, wherever, which is like accessible. And we'd find material that is like 20 meters. And then we'd be like, okay, what can we make with 20 meters? Okay, we can make X amount of tops, like 15, and that's it. We wouldn't be like, oh, we need to like get 200 meters of fabric and make like 200 shirts, and like, oh, it's really good. Maybe we need to do it again and just keep pumping out the same thing. And then it's like everybody then looks the same. And then suddenly we all turn into all the same like soldiers. And then it starts becoming very dystopic. And then nobody has a kind of form of expression because we all look the same.
Right.
So by making things that are smaller and in way smaller quantities and mismatched, or I don't know, we had enough fabric for one leg and this leg was different. People are buying pieces that are unique for one of 6 or one of 10. And
Right.
I think that's something really special and something really rare to find these days, because when brands are starting now, all they're interested in is like printing a logo tee. It's like, come on, man. Like fashion is like the most
Yeah.
polluting industry like in the world. I think it's the 4th most polluting industry. And there are places in Africa now where they can't take any more waste, but they have to, because people keep pumping out merch essentially, or garments that are not going to see a second life. And fashion needs to change, and we shouldn't just be interested in financially making money really quickly, and
Right.
finding different ways to make products ethically rather than just making it for a quick buck.
I think that kind of ties in within her entire ethos and in your entire world building. I think that the choice to stop participating in fashion shows is a sustainability statement in
Yeah.
itself, right? Like,
Yeah,
why
totally.
spend so much money? Why spend so much resources just for 15 minutes
Yeah.
15 minutes of coverage? Why mass produce something? Because maybe like half of that, or well, not half, but like maybe like there's gonna be like a small amount that's gonna be laying in a warehouse
Yeah.
for a few years, or you have to like dispose of it. And I think it's a really important initiative, but also like, to be able to like just have like something that's more unique and
Yeah.
like put that out in the world is true creativity, in my opinion.
Totally.
Because you can actually, you're always consistently having to like think of something new and also introducing new ideas.
Yeah.
Like things aren't going to be the same silhouette.
Yeah.
Like you're not going to like buy, like again, like have a t-shirt that's like a blank tee with a graphic on it and call it like something new, because in its essence it's already been done before.
Yeah.
So I think honestly, kudos to you to be able to kind of like continue practicing that, and
Yeah.
also like integrate consistently integrating that within your world
Yeah.
that you're building. So just with the time, the considering time and how limited we are, I think we have 4 minutes, right? 4 minutes? Yeah, we have 4 minutes. Okay, cool. So my final question for you is like, what's next for Paria Farzaneh? Like, what do you have? What do you have in store? That's not NDA signed. Like, what are you looking forward to for 2025 and beyond?
One thing that I'm kind of looking forward to, and I kind of stepped into it a little bit last year, is that I started teaching at CSM on the first year fashion course. And yeah, I know that I've had influence with the brand and the platform there, but having a direct influence where I'm somebody's tutor and I'm telling them, don't do this, feels, yeah, it feels very powerful. It feels very rewarding. It feels really great to be so honest with these students and telling them all of the things that I've gone through and all of these experiences, and making them like, yeah, it's not just about creating an aesthetic. It's got to be a lot more than that.
You had a really interesting point in our issue of the launch issue of Dazed MENA that launched about 2 weeks ago, and Priya is actually featured it inside the magazine as well. But you didn't know, woo! But you also mentioned how like your students, like you're always questioning your students and asking them, why do you want to do this? Like,
Yeah.
and so like, and there has been a bit of like cognitive dissonance or resistance from them as well. And
Yeah.
you're very candid with them as well. So I'm curious to know like how like have they been able to like, you know, like marinate within what you're saying and kind of like settle down and like starting to like really like think a bit more deeper into why they want to do why they want to do what they do, or is it still a little bit of resistance in the way that they receive what you say?
I think like being like 21 or like 22, you literally have no idea what you're doing, you know, and they're super intelligent and they have like a lot of outlook on what's going on in the world. And yeah, that's really inspiring to me. And for me to be able to say like, hey, can you just like check yourself in a mirror, because you're so lucky to do this, or to think about anything. You don't have to think about paying people. You don't have to think about bills. Like, you're here to be so creative. Yeah, it's just amazing to like actually see somebody listen to what I've said. And yeah, they're definitely not jaded in terms of like self-reflection. I think that's so important. You know,
For
if you
sure.
can't see who you are at that point, then you're going to find it very difficult as you grow older and mature and become whoever you want to be as an artist.
Absolutely. Main takeaways to kill your ego and not take yourself too seriously, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. I want everyone to give a round of applause for Paria Farzaneh.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
We ran out of time, so we can't have questions. So sorry, but Paria is gonna be. She has a booth a little bit down the streets, like down the
Literally
street.
just around
like
the
literally
corner,
right beside
guys.
this, literally right beside this place. But so you guys, if you guys have any questions, she's more than happy to have a conversation because
Yes, come
she's
and
such
say
a
hi.
lovely person. So
Oh, thank you.
thank you everybody for coming.
Thank you, guys.